Eric, turning it over to you.
As you may know, as homebrewers, dirty or contaminated equipment is a great way to get dirty and contaminated beer. Conversely, clean equipment, sanitary equipment, is a necessary element of making good beer. So I want you to take three things away from this, if anything else. One, there's 4 levers you can pull in cleaning that I'm going to talk about. You need to know what they are and how to use them so you can actually get your gear clean. 2, know what to clean all the time and what to clean periodically so that your stuff is clean in the right condition and you're not wasting energy. And then 3, to understand the relationship between cleaning and sanitizing so that you're doing the right thing with the right chemicals at the right time. Again, to not waste your time, not waste your money, and make sure that the time you put into brewing actually results in delicious beer. So to start with, I just want to clarify cleaning versus sanitizing. You cannot sanitize dirt, but you can clean it. Cleaning is the act of removing soils and organic materials and unwanted particles from your equipment. That is cleaning, removing stuff that doesn't belong. Sanitizing is making it hygienic, disinfecting it, getting rid of bacteria and other living organisms, which is not the same as sterilization. There are different levels of allowable living things between those two. So we're after sanitizing and brewing. Those are like, we need to understand those as the foundations before I get into anything else. So just yell at me if I'm losing you or if you disagree. I'm going to spend most of the time here on cleaning, and I'll finish on sanitizing at the end, and then tie a big bow around it. So to start with cleaning, the acronym to remember is TACT. T-A-C-T. Stands for temperature, agitation, concentration, and time. And I'll get into all 4 of them now. I'm going to start with temperature because it's the simplest. Pretty much higher is better. So long as the material you're trying to clean can tolerate the temperature you're using, the higher the temp, the faster your cleaning is going to get done, and the more effective your cleaning agents will be. So boiling water will work faster and clean better than water that comes out of your tap, for example. But don't boil plastic that cannot tolerate boiling temperature because you'll end up with something sad and melty. Yeah.
I know this firsthand.
So do I.
So that's temperature. Easy. Higher is better. Just know the limits of the materials you're working with. A is agitation. I'll say more is better, but only sometimes. Agitation can be things like brushes. I use this to clean kegs, pots, pretty much anything that needs like a good, legitimate scrubbing that's made of metal that's not going to scratch. I would not use something like this on plastics. These bristles are very hard. This is where more agitation is bad, because the more scratches you put into anything plastic, the more places that it's going to be hard to clean, and the more nooks and crannies for bacteria and other nasties to grow. So I'd say, Keith.
So should we ask questions as you go along, or say?
Totally interrupt me with all your questions.
Cleaning the top of carboy drives me crazy, even with one of those bendable brushes. Do you have any tips?
Yes, I will get to that. Let's
Okay,
get through
thank
the 4 elements of cleaning, then we'll talk about how to clean those hard to reach places.
And let's also include choice of equipment. For Monster versus Better Bottle. The For Monster has a wide mouth where you can put your whole arm in and use a soft cloth, versus a Better Bottle, which is better plastic. I actually prefer the Better Bottle quality, except for it's a narrow mouth, and the plastic, or the scraper things are much more likely to scratch. So choosing your equipment may change your cleaning process, and for the better.
And glass versus plastic. Glass harder to destroy,
And glass,
but even
way
fucking
more
harder
solid,
to
but
scrub
as
and
a
clean.
carboy is dangerous.
Yep. So think about what size brushes you need. They make carboy brushes, but you may not want to scrub that carboy because it's plastic. Every scrub is making micro scratches in it that is just another vector for stuff to grow and hang out. So I use this for scrubbing anything made of metal, my brew kettle, and I stick this, and I'll get into kegs in a bit, but I stick this into the keg and scrub all of these nooks and crannies in the top of the keg where the lid goes. Because all sorts of shit hangs out there that you don't want in your beer. This is meant for cleaning beer line. I will never clean beer line with this because that's, again, more places where you're going to scratch it up and stuff is going to grow. But I will clean all my dip tubes with this and any other like narrow places where it needs a good scrubbing. I have these Erlenmeyer flasks that I make my starters in. I just shoved this in there to clean it before making a starter this weekend because there was nasty stuff pressed on the inside that I apparently didn't notice last time I cleaned it. And you should not make a yeast starter in a dirty flask because you're just starting off with infected yeast starter. So agitation, more is better so long as you're agitating in a good way. So you might not want to scrub your plastic carboy, but you might fill it with water and shake it vigorously because shaking is your other form of agitation. So where you can't scrub it, I might fill it with as hot as water as it can tolerate, cap it off, and just pick it up and shake the ever-living shit out of it. Or they sell keg and carboy cleaners where you turn it upside down and you have a pump that does the agitation for you, which is basically a clean in place process. So SIP is another form of agitation. A lot of my cleaning process on my brew gear is just recirculating with a pump. That's another form of agitation. The more you agitate, the more cleaning you'll get done. Just remember, what kind of agitation can my material accept without getting scratches or getting damaged? Plastics you have to be really careful with. Don't use brushes on plastics if at all possible. So that's A. We're at TA. We've done temperature, higher is better, agitation, more is better, don't scratch your plastics. Now we're talking about C, concentration. Again, the rule is sort of kind of simple, more is better, but read your labels. These labels tell you, for example, the concentrations used for fermenters versus using clean in place versus cleaning stuff that touches food. This tells you how to mix it. And these are horrible directions that I hate because they tell you by weight. And I don't measure by weight when I'm cleaning. But it tells you on here how much to use to clean different kinds of materials.
Measure by weight. Yes. It is, but you don't have to measure by weight every time.
Measure once.
Measure by weight once. Figure out what measuring that is, and then you know that that scoop is 1 ounce, or that scoop is 1.5 ounces, and I need 2/3 of that scoop. But at least once, measure by weight, and maybe you're talking about periodic, recalibrate every once in a while.
A great example of why you should measure by weight and where these things combine is the more PBW you put in, the harder it is to mix. And I can tell you I've put in too much PBW and you end up with a solid PBW cake at the bottom. You solve that by A, measuring by weight, because the weights they tell you will surely dissolve, or B, stir it or shake it a lot after you put your cleaner in to make sure that it's fully dissolved. A cake of cleaner at the bottom of whatever you're trying to clean is not helping you.
The other thing with that is, especially with harder water, PBW at high concentration is more effective at cleaning. However, it is more likely to scale. And the harder your water, the more your scale. If you live in this area and you use ground town water, you're probably at a relatively high, you're at the borderline between medium and high and hard water. So the hard concentrations will leave you scale, especially if you let things sit. Always rinse at higher. He's going to get onto this, but anyway, pay attention to your concentrations, and more can be too much with PBW.
And this is where the last T of TAC comes in, time. And again, real simple, more time, more cleaning. So if you mix at a lower concentration and give it more time to soak, you will get more cleaning power. So an example is soaking stuff overnight, soaking stuff over the weekend. The longer it sits, the more cleaning you get. Again, be aware of your materials. You may not want to soak plastics forever or soft things. But things that are metal or stainless steel, you can effectively soak them till the end of time if you want to. There will be some limit to how much cleaning you get just based on time. So,
but for plastics, you will the PBW will leach the softening agents of the plastic. So you do not want to soak plastics indefinitely. A few hours is probably your max for a clear fermenter, a PET fermenter.
Yeah, pay attention because depending, if you look at the symbol on your plastic items, depending upon if it's PET or HDPE or whatever that one is,
Yep.
they can tolerate different amounts of soaking, different amounts of time before they start leaching stuff.
I think HDPE is better.
Yeah.
I think PETE is the one you want to be careful about PBW for a long time.
And
Definitely want to be.
And PET is your better bottles and most of your plastic fermenters. Keith.
Okay, another dumb question. I'm a beginner, please forgive me. PBW, I'm thinking peanut butter and...
Powdered brewery wash.
Oh,
And
no.
ironically, they make liquid PBW now, which is technically not the P, it's LPW, but they still call it liquid PBW.
So why not just dish detergent or Cascade? And what's the advantages
PBW
of-
has a couple of distinct advantages. One, it dissolves really easily, generally speaking. Two, very effective at fats and proteins, whereas like Dawn is mostly effective on, it's a suffragant, it's effective on fats mostly. And also, if you said like why PBW versus OxyClean, because OxyClean's a million times cheaper, PBW just rinses way more easily than OxyClean.
It
Like
rinses nicely, it doesn't have the surfactants that can mess up the foam in your beer too, so it rinses off really nicely and doesn't interact with the beer once it's rinsed off.
So you recommend PBW as your...
It costs, but it's a really good cleaner for anything that comes in contact with beer.
And if you judge or Stewart in most competitions, they
do
usually
that.
give away the little tiny sample containers, which
So
will
it
last
matters
for a
reason to
while.
judge
I can't just
Stewart.
dump Dawn into my thing and
Yeah.
start shaking it.
Can, but-
Unless your bucket is full of oily ducks, don't do that.
Alright, so no more fermenting oily ducks.
No.
I'll see if I have some of the small.
I just didn't know what it was.
No,
What
no,
is this
no.
white jar here?
If you should have some and use them.
You can recreate PBW by a blend of other cleaners. It's OxyClean free, not any of the scented ones and other ones. OxyClean free. Tide free also is quite good at it. But this is crafted to the dirt that you get as a brewer. OxyClean and Tide Free and those other ones are also looking for blood and fat and oil and all of these other things that brewers don't usually have a problem with. So it's just a crafted thing that's made for the brewing industry. It works really well. You can recreate it by other things. If you're really that pushed, go for it.
No, I just,
It's
yeah, I
better.
just was sitting there with my
I will
dog.
get you a sample bottle.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
Just,
But
this
use
is
it
why
as
I'm
measured.
watching your presentation. I'm learning.
it foams up and it
So
just
a
lifts
question, since
stuff
someone
right
said
off.
rinse.
Okay.
I thought normally like when you clean out your fermenter or something like that, you don't want to rinse it out with PBW, basically like clear it and let the air dry.
The line that they say sometimes is don't fear the foam, which is actually specific to Starsan sanitizer. For PBW and any other cleaning agent, you definitely want to rinse it and make sure that there is zero of whatever detergent or cleaning agent you have left in your item at the end of the cleaning process.
Let's clarify. There's cleaning and sanitation.
I will get to
And
They are
sanitizer.
separate things. So when they say don't rinse, they're talking about sanitation.
Sanitation.
When you're talking about cleaning, you absolutely rinse. And you generally rinse at a warmer temperature than you were cleaning at. And that's important so they say for BBW 130 to 140 degrees is
The
like the max
hottest,
temperature.
the
Optimum
hottest you
temperature.
can get out of your tap is what you want to rinse your PBW at.
But yeah, you want to rinse at a warmer temperature than you started with, and it's not the same as sanitation.
Mike,
Question back to the plastics. Is silicone plastic or?
I do not scrub silicone.
Silicone, yes, is a plastic. And so it's the same.
Yep, I would not do anything that involves any abrasion or risk of scratching silicone.
It's this really soft plastic, resists the hell out of temperature, but no mechanical action. So it's good for hoses.
Just don't run this through your silicone hose.
On the hot side, I think that's okay, but don't scratch it.
Okay,
Oh, you can soak it, not a problem, don't scratch it.
just a few other things to think about for cleaning. Gloves. You will not burn yourself as easily if you're wearing these, especially in the winter. You will not have dry, cracked, bleeding hands. You will not get chemical burns. This is like $3. Use them. They will save you in a bunch of different ways.
And those are like really cheap dishwashing ones. If you go on Amazon, and I'll share a link
These
on
go up to my
Discord.
elbows.
Yeah, no, I have some that go up to here and have elastic there and really thick rubber.
Yeah, the full
They're
bulk, right?
awesome.
Have you been inseminating cows on it?
Even
And they're not, yeah, it's what you want to use for going into a cow.
like
Yes.
100 of these is $1.
But if you can get the big one ones, get the big one.
You want to say what that is there?
Yeah, this is like a very simple cloth rag with a little scrubby thing. Like you don't have to go expensive or spend a ton of money on this stuff. Even this was like $5 on Amazon. It's like an industrial toilet cleaning brush. It is not like a purpose-made brewing thing. So just remember TACT, temperature, agitation, concentration, time. So now that we know the levers to pull for cleaning, I want to move into periodic cleaning versus regular cleaning. Regular cleaning after every single brew day for me involves hot PBW and recirculation loops. The goal is I want every surface I could see to look clean to the point where I'd be okay eating off of it. That's my rule. That's not a rule, that's my rule. Anything I can see with my eye just looking at my brew setup, I want to be willing to put food on it and eat off of it. Then you have your things that I can't see but are just awful dirt traps that you need to disassemble and clean every single time. So some examples. How many people use ball locks?
Oh, yeah.
How many people disassemble and soak and clean their ball lock and every single part of it after every use?
Just started.
Do it. A tiny screwdriver, it disassembles. There's 4 pieces in here. There's a gasket, a spring, and a stopper. Hops, protein, malt, crud will all get stuck in here. You don't want an entire keg of beer flowing through that. Just disassemble it and clean it. It will take you 30 seconds. It is completely and totally worth it.
Anybody that was on the admin calendar remembers the highly carbonated Baltic porter that I gave to everybody. It was most likely from a ball lock that after disassembling I found some gunky stuff in there that could have been there for weeks or years. So now I take them apart after every use.
Another thing that nobody cleans that you need to clean, the PRV on your keg lid. This takes 2 seconds to unscrew. It's a gasket and a spring. Hops and more crud, anything you accidentally spray out when you're degassing your keg will get stuck in here. However you clean your lid, disassemble this, make sure it's clean inside. The same thing with the upper part of your keg lid. In here, even after you've taken off the posts and the dip tubes and everything, there's a whole bunch of crevices under here. Take your brush, take your rag, make sure you're cleaning that, because anytime you jostle the keg or when the keg's full, it's coming in contact with whatever you've got up there. It's about 30 seconds worth of work to save you from ruining a batch of beer.
Derek?
Yes.
And I also take apart the liquid posts.
Yep. Take apart your posts, take the poppets out, make sure the springs and the poppets are clean. That is another place where...
Our material loves to hide in those.
Yep. Here. I don't even have the right tool. I would normally do this with a ratchet, but you can see this is 2 seconds of work. Sometimes some posts will have poppets that are built in and you need a
16
screwdriver.
millimeter wrench also does it.
I've now got the whole thing apart. I can visually inspect it and clean it, make sure I'm happy with its condition.
And it doesn't
Now,
take long.
That's true for modern ones. If you have the older corny kegs,
That's a
some
15,
of those are
16.
press fit. Well, there's a variety of sizes. I have some that are 22 millimeter.
Oh, really?
I have a
Yeah.
variety of sizes of them.
Mine are like,
But also, the poppets are not free popping out.
Yeah.
visually
There, you have
inspect
to go and
them.
get a weird
Yep.
look and kind of pull it out.
Actually, a lot of those, if you take a chopstick and push it through the top and just give it a good pop, it'll drop right out the bottom.
And getting it back in.
That's a whole different
yes,
side.
how to get it back in, which is also something you need to learn. Take like a big pen, pull out the end of both sides, take it out, pop it in with a hammer,
Ooh.
and that'll usually pop it back into place so that it's there. Eventually, you're going to end up with aftermarket poppets that don't stay in place, and it's a pain in the ass, but they work. Just replace them.
Mike,
Do you recommend taking the pockets out after every use?
I completely disassemble my kegs after every use and clean every single part. And I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm saying after all the time and energy and money I've put into a batch of beer, I'm not going to ruin it because there's shit stuck in my pocket.
Especially if it only takes an extra 1 minute.
Yeah, it should be a part of your regular routine.
I don't.
Now you know. So,
So there's a diversity there.
so now let's talk about the things that you
Oh,
might.
on that, if disassembling a keg, one keg at a time, poppets from one keg do not
Yes,
fit the
don't
same as
mix and
poppets from the other keg. If you have a variety of kegs, do not do 10 kegs at once, and then try and guess which one is Just one keg at a time.
Ask him how he knows.
So that's things that you should clean every single time. Your stuff you can see so that you can eat off of it. Some of these special places that that are nooks and crannies for dirt.
Can
Now
I
let's-
jump in though?
Yeah.
The top on a corny keg. Pop off the gasket anytime you're cleaning it, if you're soaking it in there. Like, not just these little tiny parts, but there's also
The big parts.
in there. Pop off the gasket, clean underneath there, make sure that that's all well sealed and well cleaned. And do you reseal that with keg lube?
I personally
Or petroleum
only
jelly?
use keg lube when I can't get a good seal on the keg.
I use it every time, and then I never have a leak.
That's not a sanitation issue, it's more about
It's an
a
aging
sealing
issue, no.
Is that another question?
Okay, this is one of those questions that it's gonna make you lose respect for me, but can't you just take like, instead of all this scrubbing and cleaning, just run like a mix of like bleach and water through
Nope.
this, or lye and water? And
Nope. I'm gonna
I
say
knew you were
hard
gonna say
on
no,
that.
but why?
So I'll give
You see what I'm saying is just let the chemicals dissolve all this and chemically clean it.
I have a bottler, and I meant to bring a bottle today and I grabbed the wrong bottle, so I don't have it. But I have a bottler that is it was $400 item. I got it at a competition for that. I did not spend this much money. However, it's beautiful. And every time I bottled with the thing, I would clean it with BLC, a beer line cleaner, and then I would throw Star Sand through it so that it would be pristine. And then all of a sudden, I was getting from my bottled beers that were sitting for a month or so, they weren't tasting right. Like, why is my beer not tasting right? It should. And I'm tasting the original keg, and it tastes right. And my bottled beer is not tasting right. Something is off. I disassembled and started unscrewing things and scrubbing, and there was gunk in there. Now, this is a bottler that I cleaned. I ran BLC through, I ran PBW through. This thing had all of the processes, but threaded stuff, you don't get to it. You need to break it open, and if you can agitate, agitate. If you can get temperature, temperature. If you can get time, time. And I did all three of those things to properly clean this thing. And now I'm comfortable with bottling again, but now Eric's gonna get to some other stuff in here about every day or every beer thing, and then periodic, but
I'd say the rule of thumb is, doesn't matter how much time, how much temperature, how much concentration you use. If there are nooks and crannies where things can get stuck and hide, it doesn't matter if it's bleach, lye, PBW, unless you're running like hydrochloric acid through it that's going to dissolve the stuff, you're not going to get it out of there.
Which, by the way, will eat through all of your brewery.
Yes, don't do that. I want to talk about the irregular cleaning stuff, and this is where I'm going to like dangerously expose the state of my own gear. I have not looked inside some of the things that I'm about to open up because they are due for their periodic cleanings. Before I do that, I want to pass around 3 samples of tubing. 2 are dirty and needed to be disposed of, and 1 is a fresh piece. I want you to look at the difference between them because it's obvious which is the new piece and which is the dirty pieces. If your tubing has crud that you can't get out of it, don't scrub it. If your tubing is the wrong color, it's probably time to toss it. You can see clearly the difference between new tubing and used tubing.
But if it's hot side only, does it really matter?
Matters less, but if it's hot side and all your beer is running through all that stuff, that's the accumulation of proteins and stuff from batches and batches of prior beer, that's a decision.
Those are mine.
I'm guilty. My hot side tubing is a color. I've been thinking about replacing it, but I haven't.
Silicone tubing will take on color from the first beer.
Yes.
You will have to replace it every time if you don't want color, so that's just not.
Mine's gotten to a color that I no longer
The
like.
dirty ones here are mine, and I noticed that they were changing color immediately. But I also noticed about a year in that some of the color was actual blotches, and looking inside, you can see there is stuff stuck on the walls.
Right.
So
Right.
running hot PVW through with a pump for a long time, still, after a year, you're gonna get buildup.
There's a difference between a little bit of color and, yeah,
Yeah.
but over time, all of those plastics
Yes.
will deteriorate.
That.
The next evil nasty I'm going to talk about is your pump head. I happen to own a pump with a fully disassemblable pump head. Everyone does. Many of them need screws to take them apart. I brewed on Sunday. This pump was thoroughly cleaned after my mash and then reused on just the boil to recirculate for chilling. I'm going to pass around just the rotor from this so I don't lose small parts, but I want you to look at what is on here just from 20 minutes of recirculating while I chilled, knowing that this had been cleaned before that was done. I disassembled it and cleaned it, put it back together,
Did you clean
recirculated.
it after it was done as well?
What?
Did you also run it through?
I
your clean after it
ran
was
just
done?
hot water through it, simulating like a quick and lazy clean.
Just hot water, not
Yeah.
PVW.
You can pass that around. I hope it gets back to me because otherwise this pump head is useless.
I could use an extra pump head.
The next thing I'm going to talk about is heating coils and valves. So I've got a very standard 2-piece valve here, and I've got my heating coils. Both are due for their 6-month disassemble and cleaning. I have no idea what they look like, but I'm going to show you. Part 1 is this cam lock here, and I'm going to pass all this around. This is potentially embarrassing.
Disassemble. You mean it's done the clean
This
in
is,
place?
I have done clean in place with this. I ran a hot PBW lube for 20 minutes through it. I do that after every brew day.
Stuff you run through it.
Here's the cam fitting, pass that around, look at all of the crud in there. I pre-loosened this ball lock. How many people disassemble their ball locks or even know how?
I don't have any anymore.
You need 2 wrenches, a wrench here and a wrench here, and this baby just splits apart in 2.
And
Oh, look, there's some
2
brown
pieces
liquid in
that are
there still.
3-piece ball locks. The 3-piece are easier to disassemble with 4 screws, but
Here, you can pass that around. That's delicious.
Well,
Yeah. And this was cleaned vigorously with a clean in place system. So bear with me for a second while I unscrew this. It was not sanitized. So while I do this, I'm going to talk about one other thing that needs periodic cleaning that you would never guess. How many people check the condition of their gas system? Manifolds, gas tubing, gas ball locks, gas regulators. If you're not using one-way protectors on your gas lines, you need to be checking your gas equipment. I had an entire 1.5 years of brewing where I almost quit home brewing because I had beer that had backed up into my gas manifold, and I had shit growing in my 4-way manifold, infecting every single keg of beer that I put into my kegerator. And I couldn't figure it out because every beer tasted delicious when I kegged it, and then 3 or 4 days later when I had finished fast carving it, I would drink that beer and say, this is full of acetaldehyde, what the fuck is going on? Check your gas equipment. This is the heating coil for my rims, the heating element on my mash loop. This is 6 months of brewing. I've maybe brewed 6 times in the last 6 months. It's been cleaned every single time. Look at all the protein shit that's caked on there. This basically spends an hour passing through every beer that I make. And this is clean by my cleaning process. I'm showing you this because I want you to think about what do you have in your brewery that might be in the same condition and you're not seeing it, you don't realize it, and it could really use a deep clean. Let's see. What else? Any other questions, comments, or feedback on cleaning? Otherwise, I'm going to move over to sanitizing.
How do you clean beer lines?
I use beer line cleaner and then sanitizer. And I'll talk about what sanitizer I prefer to use for that in a second. But basically going not quite caustic, but a very basic cleaner followed by an acidic cleaner. The basic will help dissolve the proteins, and then the acidic will help flush all that out and sanitize it.
Would you have anything against using PBW beer liner?
Powdered PBW can sort of act like abrasive cleaners, where the little granules of it that don't dissolve can actually create nicks in your beer line, which is
Okay.
not great. So I use the liquid beer line cleaner because it dissolves easily and there's nothing potentially abrasive.
Got it.
Generally, you don't want solids going through your lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything plastic, I want to minimize any abrasion or mechanical agitation humanly possible.
And BLC is really targeted to the BLC being beer line cleaner.
Yes.
But it's targeted to the proteins that form on the walls of the beer lines and the specific things that form there versus PBW, which is really done for the protein. So you have
Different purpose.
beer
to-
stone,
yes.
which is
Yeah.
one thing
Yes.
that forms on the beer lines and fermentation vessels, and you have the proteins that form on the fermenters and on the boil kettles. So the two PBW and BLC, although they're both basic, they have different.
One is more basic than the other. One is more caustic, quote unquote, than the other.
Any other questions on cleaning before I move into sanitizing and then wrap up? All right. So I said it before, you can't sanitize dirt, right? Yeah, you can heat the shit out of a piece of dirt, but it has so many nooks and crannies in it that it's just going to accumulate and catch more things after you're done heating it and start growing again. So your main weapons for sanitizing as brewers are basically heat and chemicals. On the hot side of brewing, so your mash, your lauter, your sparge, your boil, we're using heat as our weapon. Everything's basically sanitary so long as you're above, at or near boiling. So most of what we're talking about is after you're done boiling, you start chilling, and then everything on the fermentation and packaging side. When I use heat as a sterilizer, I'm typically using water-based heat. Boiling stuff, so you can take your keg apart or your pump head apart, your small parts, take all that metal, any temperature-resistant plastics, you can boil it. Kegs I will often steam, so if you've got like a Shark steam mop or a wallpaper steamer, just stick it in there, let it run for 20 minutes, that steam will heat up that whole keg, kill anything. You can steam barrels. Steam and water tend to be a very gentle heat versus like an oven or a kiln or something, which is a harsher heat and you run the risk of scorching more. Just be careful with heat. Things like kegs, even after you take your steam wand out or your boiling water out, the metal will be hot for a while. Just make sure you don't grab it or make sure you're wearing your super ridiculous gloves. I think chemicals and just quick show of hands, who uses Star San? This is probably the most popular way to sanitize for brewing. We talked about don't fear the foam earlier or not rinsing. Any ideas why they say, and I don't even know if it's really true or not, don't fear the foam?
Because you see it and it looks like soap bubbles, but if you actually grab a little bit of it, put it in your mouth, it tastes completely clean like you're drinking water.
Yeah, I mean this foams so easily that it is both a benefit and a danger. Like the danger is like all that foam expands really quickly, but it's actually like a very, very small amount of Star San that creates all that foam. So when that foam settles down, you're actually dealing with very little star sand. So if you imagine a big foam blob of this in 5 gallons of beer, you're talking about maybe a few millimeters of star sand mixed into 5 gallons of beer. Not a big deal.
And the star sand, the components that make star sand, when mixed with something more basic, i.e. beer, even though beer is acidic, is yeast nutrient. It actually breaks down to yeast nutrient, which is good for the beer. So just star sand something, there's a little bit of residual, you even have a little, puddle left at the bottom, that will not impact your beer. It will at most benefit your beer.
And that being said, if you try to rinse the thing you just sanitized with water that is not sanitary, you've now made the thing you just sanitized unsanitary.
Yes.
Yep.
And water out of your tap is not sanitary.
It is potable, which is different than sanitary.
And water even out of a filter is not sanitary. It's actually especially not sanitary.
Anyone use this stuff?
I don't forget.
What is that stuff?
This is called SaniClean.
It's also known as IO4, IOStar.
This is a iodine-based non-foaming cleaner. So this has very different rules than a sanitizer. Thank you. This you don't rinse, but you need to let it dry before using it. It has a different mixing rate, and this purposely does not foam.
And
So
it is typically used if you have things that are aluminum, because star sand will pit and eat into aluminum. That's why you need to use the iodine-based, like if you have a brew jacket, much like I have, that big metal rod that they use to conduct heat is aluminum. If you put star sand on it, you're going to get it to look like Swiss cheese.
You need to know the rules of what you're using. This mixes at a different concentration than this. This requires different contact time than this. This has different, what do you do after you're done sanitizing rules in this. This you can use wet when you're done sanitizing. This they tell you let it dry first. Read the labels of what you're using to make sure that you're mixing it the right way and using it in the right way so that you actually end up with sanitary equipment at the end of it. I use this for sanitizing my pumps periodically, and I use it for beer line cleaning because it doesn't make a lot of foam. So when I'm running this out of the beer faucet, I don't get a giant bucket of foam at the end. It's much easier to deal with and clean up.
If you're running SIP through a stainless steel chemical, go with the non-foam.
Yep.
And there are other kinds of non-foaming. So that's an iodine-based non-foaming. There's also, I can't remember the name of it, but one of the nice things about star sand is it's phosphoric acid based and it doesn't smell bad. There's another one, and I have it, I can't remember the name of it. I have a keg washer that is basically a pump, an open bucket, and I was like, oh great, a non-foaming version of this, let me put it in there. Oh my God, my entire house was unlivable because it is such an unpleasant smell from this other non-iodine based. It was. It's also from star sand. I can't remember.
It might be this stuff. Is it SaniClean?
Maybe it is SaniClean, but I don't remember it
Yeah,
being
that
dark.
sounds familiar.
Anyway, it's awful. It's great in a cleaner place where you're working in a sealed environment, but if you're not in a sealed environment, bad.
If you don't own one of these or something like it, I
There were
highly
7 of
suggest
them.
you get it. Yeah, they're like $2 at Home Depot or your local hardware store. I like this one because it holds a lot, so I don't have to refill it as often. I use this to spray everything. This is star sand in here. This is probably one of the most used tools in my brew room.
Just make sure you label it.
Yes.
Star sand, very pure, otherwise, somebody.
I'm
in your
sure
house
that
looks
this
like
bottle is
bread.
labeled.
Yes.
How long does it stay good in a sprayer like that?
Star sand in general will stay good so long as the pH is in the right range. If you mix star sand with hard water, it may turn cloudy. That is some of the suffragants coming out of solution. That is okay. It doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means it may not get into as many nooks and crannies as easily. But so long as Star San measures within whatever pH range they say it needs to be
I
in,
think it's below 3.5.
Yeah. And Brian, I mixed it up with very hard tap water once just to measure the pH of it, and it was still under 3. It was plenty good. It just looks cloudy and feels slimy, but it works fine.
And if you go to Whole Foods and buy distilled water to make your bucket of Star San, it lasts for years. I fill a 5-gallon bucket whenever I need it, usually about once a year. When I get down to about 2.5 gallons in the bucket, I fill all of my water bottle, or, squirt bottles. I have at least 3 or 4 of them. I have one in my brewery, one in my serving area, one in my bottling, just one all over the place because why not? And then I toss out that last little sludge of it. The pH is still well below the threshold. It lasts forever.
Yep. Last thing before I wrap up and take any more questions, if you have a problem and you want to know if it's infection, or if you really want to test how good your sanitization practices are, you can buy these kits. This is essentially a dual-purpose kit. It's got a swab and a reactant. So if you want to test if your beer is infected, you can pour some of your beer into the reactant. If you want to test if your equipment or a surface is infected, take the sterile swab, swab it, stick that into the reactant. You'll know lickety-split if you are doing a good job sanitizing or not. It's a good test.
Does it test for bacteria, yeast? What does it test for? Or anything?
We have to open it up and read the label. I will do that after. And then lastly, another nice to have, nitrile gloves. If you're trying to keep things sanitary, if you're cleaning things that are you're touching with your bare hands, consider something like this. These are not sterile or sanitary, but they will keep whatever is growing on your skin or on your hands from getting on your brewing equipment.
So one thing I do, and I'm curious if other people do it or what other people's thoughts are, is anytime I'm doing any sort of bottling thing, I dunk my hands in the Star San to see if it is.
I do not do that
And
because
I
I
have no
find
idea
it
if that
is
works.
very bad for my beautiful skin.
Yeah.
Heating up is bad for the skin. Star San has never given me an issue.
Yes, and I've never had a problem.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
PBW, I absolutely wear gloves every time though. That's horrible.
That slippery feeling, that's your skin.
Your teeth finalized.
All right, let me wrap up because I've been talking for a long time. So I'm going to leave you with 4 things. Remember your tact, temperature, agitation, concentration, time. Those are your 4 cleaning levers. Use them the right way. Clean your equipment every time so it's visibly clean. You should be willing to eat off of any piece of your brewing equipment.
Even if you don't have kids.
Even if you don't have kids. Clean the hard to reach places that you can't see periodically. That is only 6 brews on that thing from the last time I gave it a scrub. Think about what's in your brewery that looks like that. What do you need to do about it? I can't tell you that's causing you a problem, but I can tell you there's no way that's making your beer better. And then lastly, you can't sanitize dirt. On your cold side especially, you need to make sure anything that needs to be sanitary is visibly clean first, or you're wasting your time. If you can see anything that looks wrong or out of place, you need to take care of that before you sanitize, because this is not going to be able to sanitize it.
Here's a hint. If your fermenter, you have a clear fermenter, and you clean it, and then you dry it, and of course you rinsed it with hot water, so now it's a little bit steamy, and you look at that thing as it's trying to dry and it has lines in it, those lines, that's dirt. You have not cleaned it if it's not perfectly even in how it looks. You still have something still going on there.
Are you finished?
I am.
Random questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's
So I had an
go.
idea to buy glass vessels. They have these 2-gallon vessels, and just clean and sanitize by just putting them through my dishwasher cycle. Would that be sufficient?
That will clean them, but
Hot water.
it will not guarantee to sanitize
It will
them.
not guarantee to clean them.
You see what I'm going for? It's just throw them in the dishwasher. I don't have to scrub
If
them.
it's not visual, so I recall a picture you had shared.
let's not talk about the past too much.
I'm just
Made a lot of
saying,
mistakes, you know that.
if
Water under
the
the
glass is not perfectly clear, it's not perfectly clean. You know, if it went through the dishwasher but it's still not clear, it's not clean.
Keep in mind the mouth.
Even if it went through a sanitation
the
cycle.
mouth-
What, Brian, what did you say?
Keep in mind the mouth of the vessel. So if you put a flat plate in there, it would clean it great. But your nozzles only can enter into that little small hole.
Well, I was thinking like a wide mouth, like.
Okay, so that
What I
might
think
do a
about
better
is-
job, but you gotta be careful with it.
When's the last time you cleaned the filter on your dishwasher, if your dishwasher happens to even have a removable filter? If you haven't, every loop of the pump is passing all that water through all of the decrepit food debris that
Okay.
you've eaten.
All right,
And I'm
second,
not saying, like, this is just the stuff to think about, of like, how do I make sure that I'm actually accomplishing the goal that I'm after? Because of all, like, brewing is being a janitor, right? Like, we talk about this all the way indirectly, but it legitimately, like, if your shit isn't clean and sanitary, it's not gonna work out the way that you want it to.
okay. Second question, just kind of a general question. There was one of my favorite pubs years ago where the beer used to make people sick. And we used to talk about it at the bar. You say, did you get, I had 3 beers and I was sick to my stomach. Yeah, me too. First of all, they used to say the lines needed to be clean. Just wanted to hear your thoughts. Could it be more? And secondly, what would you say in that situation with a bartender? Nowhere in. Stop.
The bartender's probably a victim of whatever the owner's decisions are. And I guess, yeah, it could absolutely be dirty beer lines, could be,
Be anything.
like if you're drinking glasses of water there, it could be in the water, it could be in their dish cleaner. What would I probably wouldn't say anything, I just wouldn't go there anymore.
In general, they say that there are no human pathogens that can survive in the pH and alcohol concentration of beer. So it shouldn't be from the beer itself. However, if the bartenders aren't washing their hands, if the beer glasses aren't clean, if the beer lines aren't well done, there's all kinds of pathogens that can be happening.
Yeah.
So
We
just
talk
don't go
about
to a
cleaning
place.
it till it looks clean, but if it's visibly clean because it was dried off with a disgusting rag, that's not.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, like in terms of food and beer establishments, my rule is usually like if I walk into the front of house and I look around and I see cobwebs and dust and shit that just looks gross, they're showing me that, I can see that. Think about what the places that I can't see look like, and how does that translate to their cleaning and sanitization practices?
Thank you.
Again, you cannot sanitize what is not clean. Period.
Any other questions?
Can you put too high a concentration of star sand? Is it dangerous to use?
Yeah, it's an acid, so if you...
Read the label and dilute it the way it's
Follow
supposed to be.
instructions.
Yeah.
Read the instructions.
There's a reason the instructions.
And it's not just bad for your cleaning, it's also bad for the septic systems and.
Bad for the
So
equipment itself. Yeah,
absolutely
it's a very strong acid.
Do not overuse the chemicals that you're given.
I mean, they basically say, they say if you get it on your skin, wash immediately and call poison control. That's
Should I stop drinking it straight? Should I pour it over ice?
No, you should keep drinking.
Let's say that more loudly.
they say.
All of these chemicals should go down your drain, not down the gutter. If you're outside, you should not be sending these chemicals out to the street front drain, because those go to the river.
Which you don't.
Your bad beer is fine, but the sanitizer, all that stuff, yeah, don't do
Yeah.
that.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you.